Hi everyone, welcome to the 27th Celebrity Typing live stream. So if you don't know the rules already, let me bring you up to speed. What you have to do if you want me to type anyone, that's anyone who is a public figure, anyone who is well known enough for me to actually have a chance at typing by looking at information about them online. For me to type them, you just have to make a super chat of at least $20, and then I will have a look at them and I'll give them a good long look to find out what type they might be, and I'll give my reasoning whilst I'm doing so. So you get a chance to see what my thinking process is behind a particular person's personality type. Now, if you would like to, of course, develop your own skill sets in being able to type people, if you would like to find out how to type people yourself, if you want to develop your knowledge of the theory of socionics, which is the theory of Jungian personality type, if that's something you'd like to do, you can always consider purchasing the WSS Type Mastery Pathway. That is a way of giving you a full, comprehensive introduction to the theory, how it works, how to then assess different personality types. You simply have to purchase the WSS Type Mastery Pathway, which I will, which you actually can find on my website, worldsocionics.org. So if you go on there to find the WSS Type Mastery Pathway, you can purchase it all at once. You can purchase it module by module if you prefer, although it's cheaper just to purchase it all at once. And yes, that way you'll be able to develop that knowledge which I have, and which some other of my regular viewers here have, such as Isaac, who's been utterly phenomenal at actually writing an essay where he was able to actually explain exactly why they were the type that they were, to the point where he was able to actually get a certificate to make him a WSS sociologist. So, if something you'd like to do, please consider purchasing the WSS Type Mastery Pathway. And if you want me to type you myself, if you want to have a diagnostic interview, that's something you can also do by going to worldsocionics.org. So now that we have that out the way, let's proceed with the celebrity typings. Starting with Gabe Newell. Thank you very much, Isaac. Let's take a look at Gabe Newell. Right. Who is Gabe Newell? An American video game developer and businessman. Fascinating. So he's on Grokpedia, I'm assuming. Let's take a look. Is he on Grokpedia? Not sure. I had to go onto the website, maybe. No. There we go. Gabe Newell. So he co-founded Valve Corporation, and he's currently its president and managing director. So he made Half-Life and Portal. Fantastic. So under his leadership, they also launched Steam as a digital storefront, which has grown to over 1 billion accounts and dominates PC gaming distribution, generating billions in revenue and enabling user-generated content through platforms like Steam Workshop. He remains actively involved in Valve Corporation's operations, with an estimated net worth at 11 billion primarily derived from his ownership stake in the company, and has expanded to other ventures, including the acquisition of super yacht builder Ocean Co. in August 2025. All right. What else can we say about him? So he co-founded Valve Corporation in 1996, alongside Mike Harrington, both former Microsoft employees, using his personal savings to self-fund the venture without external investment. The company was initially based in Kirkland, focused on developing video games with personal computers, marking a shift from corporate software to independent game creation. He left Valve in 2000, selling his stake to Newell. So Harrington left Valve, selling his stake to Newell, who assumed full leadership as president. So sounds to me as though Newell was the more sort of committed to the project, perhaps than Harrington after 4 years. His breakthrough came with the 1998 release of Half-Life, a first-person shooter that revolutionized narrative-driven gameplay through seamless integration of story and action without cutscenes or loading breaks. The game's success, selling millions of copies, reaching over 9 million, established Valve's reputation for innovative storytelling and physics-based mechanics. Well, that's also a key thing for Portal, isn't it? Earning it Game of the Year awards from multiple outlets. Right, so why is I don't actually know much about Half-Life. I know a bit more about Portal, but why is Half-Life about the physics? I wonder. Let me see. Come on. Oh, Claudia suggested Sir David Attenborough. That's a marvelous suggestion. And know it's his 100th birthday as well. I think yesterday it was. So very good suggestion, Claudia. We'll look at him next. So Half-Life physics. Oh, then it talks about Half-Life and talks of radiation. I don't think that's exactly what. And I feel he might do that. Let's see. What makes Half-Life so great? Okay. What's Half-Life 2 so great? Let's see.
What makes Half-Life 2 so great? By simply playing Half-Life 2, you can just kind of feel why the game is really good, but what specifically about it is great? For starters, the story. The world and lore of Half-Life 2 is exceptional. It almost immediately immerses you 5 minutes into the game as you are thrown into a world overrun by invaders. That initial intrigue is what had me instantly engaged when I first played the game. Next, the level design. Each map in Half-Life 2, at least to me, felt meticulously designed in a way to accommodate the most fun. Let's take a look at the notorious section, Ravenholm. Sure, you can just shoot your way out of this place. However, you can also just use the gravity gun and several traps set by Father Grigori. Lastly, it was very important to Valve to not make another Half-Life, simply to just make another Half-Life. They needed to raise the bar, so to speak, and I think that was done wonderfully with their state-of-the-art graphics. I know some changes have happened here and there over 20 years, but Half-Life 2, even in 2004, looked phenomenal. What makes Half-Life 2 so great? By simply playing Half-Life 2, you can just kind of feel why the game is really good, but
what's the gravity gun? Let's take a look. That's the gravity gun. It reminds me a lot of the portal gun from Portal. Similar sort of idea, I think. Okay, so it's a shooter, but there are also puzzles. And it's sort of science fiction. What do you do? It's just a seesaw? Right. Okay. So maybe I should just look at what Half-Life is really about. It's a 1998 first-person shooter developed by Valve Corporation. It's a debut product, first game in the Half-Life series. You see the role of Gordon Freeman, a theoretical physicist. Okay, so definitely about physics. A theoretical physicist who must escape from the Black Mesa research facility after it's overrun by aliens following a disastrous scientific experiment. This game consists of diverse combat, exploration, and puzzles. So Valve was disappointed with lack of innovation in the first-person shooter genre and aimed to create an immersive world rather than a shooting gallery. Okay, so key things here. Innovation, immersive world building, sci-fi, that sort of thing, cool technology, and with theoretical physicists as the key figures. Right. So we can assume that that's Gabe Newell's vision. He's kind of a geeky guy, kind of more exploratory, more potentially quite a bit more sort of whimsical, intuitive logic approach. That's suggesting. I remember Portal, that was quite similar, although it was purely puzzle. 2007 puzzle platform game. It's kind of puzzles that must be solved by teleporting the player's character and simple objects using the Aperture Science handheld portal device. A device that can create interdimensional portals between two flat planes. And the player character is challenged and taught by an artificial intelligence construct named GLaDOS to complete each puzzle in the Aperture Science Enrichment Center using the portal gun, the promise of receiving cake when all the puzzles are completed. There's a sort of slightly patronizing um, form of nourishment to encourage people to do these sorts of tests and exercises. And there's definitely a sense of comedy, despite the dark story. So, right. So is it similarly comedic? Not sure. As an underground Black Mesa research facility, the theoretical physical Gordon Freeman participates in an experiment on a crystal of unknown origins, triggers a resonance cascade, greatly damaging the facility and teleports in hostile alien creatures. Eventually, the surface, he discovers the United States Marines and black operators have been dispatched to the facility to terminate the aliens, which is covered instantly by eliminating all remaining Black Mesa personnel. Assigned to instruction to make his way to the Lambda complex to stop the alien invasion. He kills a giant creature inside a rocket engine test facility, uses an underground monorail to reach a rocket silo, etc., etc. So very sci-fi stuff. Not particularly comedic, though. He had a novelist write the story. Okay, okay. Other ventures. Beyond his found... I think, what's this? They continue to advance under Neil's direction with VR initiatives, building on Half-Life Alyx through hardware like the Valve Index, because increasingly integrating artificial intelligence into game development operations, updating Steam policies to allow AI-generated assets, providing developers disclose training data and avoid live-generated legal content. Okay. What else have you done? Team Fortress is a free-to-play model and cosmetic microtransactions. And Dota 2 is an online multiplayer online battle arena game that became a cornerstone of esports. Right. All quite sci-fi-ish. So other ventures, it's a diverse array of entrepreneurial endeavors in technology, marine exploration, and luxury manufacturing. He co-founded Starfish Neuroscience, a company developing minimally invasive neural interface technologies aimed at enabling distributed access to multiple brain regions for applications in neuroscience and human augmentation. Okay, so definitely a sci-fi guy. Right. What's that? Oh, Nathan Taylor wants me to look at George Clark. Nathan, if you make a super chat of at least $20, I will look at George Clark for you. All right. So, let me see. See, Oak acquired Ocean Co., a prominent Dutch super yacht builder, renowned for custom luxury vessels. Under his leadership, his ownership, it continues to prioritize projects like the 111-meter Dreamboat, scheduled to deliver in 2026, integrating advanced systems for enhanced efficiency, sustainability, and luxury yachting. This acquisition aligns with his growing personal involvement in super yachting and vision for smarter, more integrated vessel technology. Again, more about the technology, but also creating a sort of very immersive, luxurious experience. His financial success at Valve has enabled his independent pursuit, allowing him to invest in startups across sectors like biotechnology, oceanography, without relying on traditional funding models. He seems quite broad-minded, interested in a number of different areas and pursuits. And he has engaged in philanthropy as well. Co-founded the Heart of Racing, a charitable initiative that raises funds for children's hospitals through motorsport events. He also co-founded Foundry 10, a philanthropic educational research organization that develops non-traditional learning programs for underserved youth, funded directly by him to explore topics like hip-hop production and auto mechanics as pathways to skill building and career exploration. He's also done some environmental stuff like marine conservation, deep sea exploration, etc. He married at the same time he founded Valve Corporation. They then divorced after more than 2 decades of marriage. They had 2 sons, which kept out of the public eye. His relationship following his divorce is extremely limited, with no confirmed romantic partnerships reported from credible sources. He emphasizes the role of family in shaping his professional decisions, particularly in prioritizing work-life balance at Valve to ensure employees can spend adequate time with their loved ones. This perspective echoed in Valve's employee handbook, which stresses maintaining equilibrium between professional commitments and family life. So work-life balance is something which Gabe Newell is across, unlike with some other people. He was diagnosed with Fuchs dystrophy, a congenital corneal disease that causes vision impairment and potential blindness if untreated. Goodness. Since the pandemic, he's adopted a nomadic lifestyle centered on the ocean, primarily residing aboard his yachts and working remotely from them. He stated that aside from a brief period of 2021, he has lived full-time at sea since the onset of the pandemic, embracing the mobility and seclusion it provides. So a sort of free nomad, sort of on his own, but sort of able to go anywhere. His daily routine reflects a seamless integration of professional commitments and marine pursuits, but his self-description is retired in the sense of pursuing enjoyable activities. He typically ends his day with work, followed by scuba diving, additional work sessions, and either a second dive or a gym time, all while aboard his vessel where he socializes with companions. Where he works 7 days a week, often from his onboard bedroom. He emphasizes the fun aspect, noting that the things I get to do every day are super awesome, blending productivity with leisure in a fluid manner. His interests extend to gaming, artificial intelligence, and ocean exploration. Yep. He seems like someone who very much likes his space and likes to have a sort of, has almost created quite a harmonious space for himself without people disrupting it. Whilst doing very sort of cool things he finds fun, it seems. So already I'm leaning Alpha NT, potentially with more introverted sensation than I would expect from an ILE. So let's see if that holds up. Gabe Newell. Wow. Let's do an interview. Gabe Newell. 13 years ago. Let's do that one.
Hey, it's Silvermania. We are in Bellevue, Washington, and there is Valve headquarters right there. So the game station was asked to interview Gabe Newell.
Is this him?
Unfortunately, they're all
No.
from LA and they couldn't get here quick enough. So they're letting us do it because we live the closest to Bellevue, Washington. So we're gonna head inside now and try and find Gabe. But they told us that we're not allowed to film inside, but we're going to anyway. All right, looks like Valve's waiting room.
Wow, it looks pretty cool.
What do you think Val would do if I just jumped out of this window and killed myself? Oh, check this out. We got some sweet concept art from Portal. All right, here we go. Oh, hey, man, how's it going? Hey. I pull yourself much? Trophies. You're on an ego trip. Look at all the trophies. Oh, meet the pyro and everyone else. Jarrett, check out the Atlas statue. What's Atlas? Oh. Yeah. Hey.
Are you from the game station?
Yeah, from the game station. Justin, Jarrett, and Rob.
Hi, nice
Hi, how you doing? How you doing?
Hi. Gabe should be here probably about 5 minutes or so.
Okay.
So just make yourselves comfortable and you should be in here shortly.
Okay, thanks.
All right.
Freaking out a little, you know?
There's lots of cameras.
Fine. Greetings.
All right, Mr. Newell, I got some questions for you.
Call me Gabe.
Okay, thanks. All right. First question. What do you think of the current state of the gaming industry?
It sucks.
Do you care to elaborate?
Not really.
Is this real?
All right, Gabe, where do you think the gaming industry will be in the next 10 years?
Hell in the shitter.
This isn't real, is it?
The toilet, the turd flume.
And why will the gaming industry be down the turd flume within 10 years?
I can't answer that.
I don't know if this is real. I'm gonna go to this one. I'll do this one. Is that even him?
What's Valve's take on piracy?
Piracy to us. So we don't really.
Yeah,
worry about
that wasn't
piracy.
him. This is him.
You know, when we think, when you look at the top 10 issues on our list at any given point in time, piracy is almost never, something that's on that list. And the reason that we think that we don't have issues with piracy is that there's misconceptions in the industry about what piracy is, right? There's assumption that what is piracy? Piracy is about people want to steal stuff from you, right? That they don't want to pay any money and they want to get your content. But when you look at the fact that these people have, $2,000 PCs and they're spending $50 a month US more on their internet connections, clearly they're willing to spend money. So from our point of view, what we saw more and more is that piracy is a result of bad service.
Interesting.
On the part of game companies.
So he's taking a non-punitive view and more of a sort of reassessment of it. The
United States knows that Russians are pirates, right? So there's no point in localizing your game. There's no point in making your product available in Russia because all they'll do is pirate it.
Mm.
When the reality is that the pirates in Russia were actually doing a much better job than the games companies themselves in localizing the product and making it available. So if I wanted the product and I didn't want to wait 6 months to get the product, and if I wanted it in Russian, I was going to have to go to a pirate simply because I couldn't get it any other way.
Right.
So
here's the extrovert intuition again.
Australia or the UK or the United States, and it was localized in Russia. All of a sudden, our piracy problems in Russia disappeared. So it really
Thank you very much. On the adventure, I'll take a look at Shigeru Miyamoto.
How can you provide the best possible service to your customers? And pricing really is one of the less important aspects of that whole equation. People are happy to pay money if they're getting what they perceive as a great product delivered on their terms. This is an example where a lot of the copy protection schemes go in exactly the wrong direction. They're actually negative service, right? Suddenly I don't know if this product. So as a customer, what I want is I want my content on any device at any point in time with a lot of security. Right? I don't want to have to worry when I buy a new PC that I won't be able to play a game that I've paid for. And then with copy protection, you're suddenly like, okay, if I reinstall my operating system, will I be able to play this game? If I buy a new PC, will I be able to? If I go over to my friend's house, will I be able to do it? So if you solve the real problem, which is, hey, I can go over to my friend's house and play the game. I can be in a cyber cafe on vacation on holiday, and I can play my game. And I can buy new PCs and never have to worry about backing this up or restoring backups or anything like that. Oh, that's great. Then I'm much less likely to get a pirated version. Copy protection makes it less likely that that's going to be the case. And higher service platforms like Steam or other ones that are coming out make you more confident. So when you attack the problem that way, by improving the service component, the experience, rather than through copy protection, which reduces the service component, copy protection is actually going to increase. I mean, there's anecdotal evidence.
Very compelling speaker.
Increases rather than decreases the piracy of games. So, like I say, by focusing on the customer and doing useful things for the customer, piracy really becomes sort of a non-issue for us.
Okay, what else are we going to get from him? Interesting. Let's look at this. This is before he grew his facial hair. Okay, thank you. Come on.
Well, Half-Life 3 ships for our multiplayer games to get a feature like HDR. After Orange Box, we have to get episode 3 out. We know how the trilogy ends, and there are a bunch of loose ends and narrative arcs that need to come to a conclusion in episode 3. So that's going to be a big focus for us. The main thing that we're working on right now, after we get the orange box out the door, is going to be episode 3, so we can finish off this trilogy and finish the story arcs that the characters are going through. We're going to be running this experiment on.
It's hard to finish off story arcs, tie things up.
Episode 3, and we're going to sit down and say, so we had episode 1, which was a little bit shorter, episode 2 that's longer, came as part of the orange box with the
Used to do this for a decade.
and whatever we end up doing in episode 3. Our plan for Half-Life is to get through these 3 episodes. Welcome to Half-Life 2, episode 2. We are at the midpoint in our trilogy of episodes, which will conclude in episode 3.
Episode 3, what do we know about it? What can you tell us?
From our point of view, there's enough newness in the
Okay, let's talk about how he's talking about it. So we never quite delivered in episode 3, it sounds like. Right, never released. Okay. Fun is not realism, but reinforcement. What does that mean? Is it now?
where you'd be sitting in a design review and somebody say that's not realistic, and you're like, okay, what does that have? Like, explain to me why that's interesting, because in the real world I have to write up lists of stuff I have to go to the grocery store to buy, and I've never thought to myself that realism is fun. I go play games to have fun. So we had to come up with some notion of what fun was. We knew it was an ad hoc definition, and it was the degrees to which
He defined what fun is?
recognizes and responded to the player's choices and actions, right? You know, in behavioral science, you would say we're explicitly talking about what were reinforcers and what the reinforcement schedules were, right?
He
At that point in time, that
defined
was
what fun
making
is.
design decisions. The point I would make is, if I go up to a wall and shoot it, to me, it feels like the wall is ignoring me. I'm getting a narcissistic injury when the world is ignoring me. So it is like, to me, I was trying to convey to the user a sense of, yes, you were making choices. Yes, you were progressing, which meant the game had to acknowledge that back to you. If you shoot at a wall, there have to be decals. If you kill a bunch of Marines, the Marines have to run away from you, right? You have to have this sense of the game acknowledging and responding to the choices and actions and progressions that you've made. Otherwise, it loses any sort of impact.
He defined what fun is. I think that's a very useful thing to have seen of him. Anything else with Gabe Newell? I think the defining of it is by pretty introverted logic. He's gone about it in that way. He defines it. Doesn't just experience and enjoy. He has to define what it is and then enjoy it. So it suggests to me alpha value still, but with introverted logic coming first. Does the hand deliver some Steam Decks?
So I emailed them. We are reaching out to a few folks that we have listed as Steam Deck reservation holders in the first batch who happen to live near Val. Since we'll need someone home to sign for it, we're reaching out to see if it works, and if so, please confirm address for delivery. One guy said, I don't believe you.
Hopefully people won't get mad that I'm signing them. I think it's going to be weird. Like, if I were at home and I was getting a delivery,
It's really nice going out and delivering himself.
Cameras get out of a truck. They're going to be like, I've got your Steam Deck. Hi.
Oh my god. Hello.
Are you Hayden?
Yes.
Hi, Hayden. I'm Gabe.
Oh my god. Hello.
So we got some of the decks early. And so we decided this is a big milestone for us to finally have these in hand and be able to give them to people. So I'm super excited to give you your deck.
Oh my gosh. Oh, this is so exciting. Oh.
I
Oh
signed
my
it. I
gosh.
hope that's okay.
That's so cool. This is.
My email is gabe@valvesoftware.com. I'd love to hear what you think after you've had a chance to play with it.
Absolutely. I'll let you know.
Right?
Wow.
Have fun.
So much.
Okay, so do the sort of feel good stunts. Again, leans more alpha, I think. Still when Linus emailed Gabe Newell. Do you see that? Let's see this one. Well, how did Steam become a good monopoly?
Didn't exist. Okay, hear me out for a second. I'm definitely glad it exists. I use it like several times a week to buy and play games, and I have a good experience almost every time. but it definitely shouldn't exist.
So he really loves mechanisms, valves,
That
steam.
controlled 70% of its market,
Yeah.
and that had basically zero meaningful competition. And that the CEO owns a fleet of yachts so big that he needs smaller support yachts for the main one. You have to
Wow.
start thinking about guillotines and not video games. And yet, this more or less perfectly describes Valve, the company responsible for Steam. It's basically impossible to name another tech company from that era that has a reputation that's half as good as Valve. And
Valve has a
just
pretty
quick
good
note,
reputation.
We'll show
It's
you
true.
a litany of admiration and good reviews for Gabe Newell, the founder, in a way that very few people seem to talk about, say, Zuckerberg or Bezos. Valve and Steam have won at the game of capitalism, and they've effectively monopolized an entire business. And yet they are, at the same time, lauded as one of the best examples of a consumer-friendly product. And it makes no sense at first glance.
So he's a really nice guy, basically.
Capitalism without getting greedy. Valve Corporation is without a doubt one of the most important companies in all of technology. It was founded by two guys, Gabe Newell and Mike Harrington, who left Microsoft in 1996 to pursue a dream project, creating their very own video game from scratch. Their debut project was Half-Life, and it was so successful that it still is today considered one of the greatest video games of all time.
And just leaving Microsoft and just creating your own video game. So
Still
the
incredible.
fun is the motivator here.
Millions of players every day. But after releasing several extremely popular games themselves, they noticed a few issues with the games industry. If you're a little older, you might remember a time when pirating a PC game was comically easy. Literally within a few days, you could get free software and bypass most security measures with like a few seconds of Googling. And we saw the first wave of companies getting really desperate to put the lid on piracy. When Doom 2 was leaked weeks before its official release, their developer responded by banning any pre-launch reviews or external testing for their next game, Quake. The then vice president of marketing even announced that no copy of our games would leave the building. Except that game ended up also being leaked 3 days before its release. Some kid literally just broke into their network and downloaded the game in front of them. And they were so young that the company didn't even bother pressing charges. This state of affairs, though, wasn't all fun and games. The lack of security also made games way more prone to hacking and cheating, and it was super difficult for game developers to have a clean method to offer security and performance patches over the lifespan of the game. And this is where Steam came in. You see, Gabe Newell has a pretty famous take on piracy.
What's Valve's take on piracy? So we don't really worry about piracy. There's misconceptions in the industry about what piracy is. They don't want to pay any money and they want to get your content. But when you look at the fact that these people have, $2,000 PCs, clearly they're willing to spend money. Everybody in the United States knows that Russians are pirates. Available at the UK. Problems in Russia disappear. Piracy is a result of bad service.
The whole idea behind Steam was to fix part of this service problem, to combine piracy protection, software updates, and anti-cheat technology all into one platform that was at least as easy to use as the pirate methods. The scope of the project expanded over time to not just include Valve's games, but other people's games, social and community features as well. And, well, they kind of nailed it. Since launching in late 2003, Steam has accumulated over 100,000 games and now has over 40 million daily concurrent users. I think it'd be a stretch to call Valve a game developer like you might have in the 90s. Today, they're a retail business that occasionally develops games on the side. But still, even despite that, the world has changed a lot since 2003, and Valve has followed such a drastically different path than the rest of the tech world. We can compare it with, say, Microsoft, which recently announced that it was increasing prices of its Xbox Game Pass subscription service by 50 to 100%, depending on where you are in the world. Or even Nintendo, which is selling $80 to $90 games. Meanwhile, Steam, on the other hand, has no subscription services, it has a weirdly generous return policy, and several extremely generous sales every year. But that's clearly not
very generous.
Better in gaming today. You won't find any reviews like this if you look up their competitors. People don't wax poetic about the Epic Games Store or about EA Origin. And there are a few really good reasons why Valve behaves the way they do, and seemingly nobody else does. Honestly, we can't talk about this story without acknowledging the elephant in the room. Every time we go online, there are companies that are tracking what we buy, where we live,
adverts,
and even mind data. Decided to become publicly listed on the stock market. Let's get back to it. So Valve is a weird company, but not just from the outside. While basically every major tech company from their era decided to become publicly listed on the stock market and solicit investment from the public, Valve has had a really quite different approach. They've remained completely private since being founded, and as a result, it can be hard to find out pretty much anything about how the company works. But some people have done their best to dig deep.
So he keeps everything under his own control. He doesn't give out much about himself.
Them being private is how they set goals. A public company like Meta has obligations every quarter. They have to announce and subsequently beat their earnings estimates.
Gabe does not want to feel beholden to anyone.
Small dip in revenue.
He doesn't want to see control of what he's doing.
The line has to keep going up, and the collective tech industry realized a while ago that the best way to do that is to acquire as many users as humanly possible, and then you start squeezing them for everything they're worth. You add in a subscription plan, and you can get consistent monthly recurring revenue, which makes it easier to create these earnings estimates. You can shoehorn in blockchain, cloud, or AI, depending on what year it is, and you got another couple $100 billion of investment, easy peasy. And the strategy has worked so effectively.
So Gabe just does what he wants.
Microsoft, Apple, and Amazon are all literally trillion-dollar companies. Zuckerberg's platform has decided the results of elections, and Amazon brought in $640 billion in revenue in 2024. Even the most generous estimates put Valve's revenue at like 1 to 2% of a platform like Amazon. That's a pretty big downside if your goal is to make the biggest company on the planet or to become the most powerful person on the planet. But that's not the case at Valve. Being private offers a hell of a lot of benefits. You're only bound to the will of a handful of owners who think on a much longer time frame. You can do stuff because they think it's a good idea. And they don't have to cater to whatever's trendy in the market just to keep their business solvent day to day. You'll actually notice that the Steam interface has barely changed since the original launch. There's no AI chatbot in there, and their changes operate under a whole different calculus, a whole different set of decision-making principles, since being relevant to Wall Street is just not a core part of their business. They can focus their energy on changes that are actually worth doing, not ones that look like what the market wants to hear. And that philosophy has kind of permeated the entire company from top to bottom. A few years ago, a copy of their internal employee handbook leaked and revealed a lot of weird stuff happening inside Valve. Valve is a company where no one has a formal manager, projects are completely self-organized, and employees decide how they allocate 100% of their work time throughout the week. The handbook literally tells employees that they should only work on a project that they believe is important enough for them to work on. They have a section all about work-life balance.
No power dynamics.
Towards a specific employee that they can speak to if they need more encouragement to take time off. There's so much stuff in here that would never in a million years pass the approval structures of your average public company. Where having power over people is kind of the point a lot of the time. Stuff like nobody has ever been fired at Valve.
So no pressure. It's an anti-pressure organization. It's anti-power structure organization. People have the freedom to do what feels right for them.
Quite a lot out of its people, especially given how
it also has quite a cohesive underlying philosophy to it at the same time.
Not the worst tech bros out there, but it's important to remember one thing about Valve. It's not a charity, okay? It exists like literally every other company of this scale to make a lot of money, and it does that incredibly well. The CEO, Gabe, isn't suffering because of his choices. He hasn't sacrificed anything in the pursuit of his business model, right? He's got an armada of yachts and is currently building a $400 million super yacht, which is about the same price as a Boeing 747 passenger jet. And I don't know how many times you might need to hear this, but you don't get quite to this level without doing at least some degree of shady business. And Valve has not been immune from that. Honestly, the most important reason why Valve continues to operate the way it does is because it works incredibly well at making money. Their revenue per employee is higher than basically every other major tech company. And they just like print money with Steam, which is likely the reason why we've seen so few actual game releases from a company that was created to release games. It makes a lot more sense to just sell other people's games and benefit from the upside of a successful hit and take little to no risk if a huge project flops on their platform. Even once you're aware of the main factors behind success, their unique corporate structure, their good leadership, focus on consumer experience.
Everyone on the same level. Hang on, wait, look at that again.
A little difficult to
look at that.
Other people's games and benefit from the upside of a successful hit and take little to no risk if a huge project flops on their platform. Even once you're aware of the main factors behind Valve's success, their
Okay. Valve organizational charts as envisioned by employees. Domain 1, everyone on the same level. Same level. Everyone's just on the same level. Everyone's all connected. It was all lovely. This is a horizontal collectivist organization. As envisioned by the employees, it's not even centering Gabe in it. It's everyone together. It is an alpha organization.
Unique corporate structure that
led by a logical type, very logical type, intuitive logical type.
Strong hiring. It can be.
It can only either be LII or ILE, I think, at this point.
Given that competition,
and which of the two makes more sense? I think LII makes the more sense. Why? There's a lot of introverted sensation implicit to this, but also the fact he defined what fun is before he did anything else shows the introverted logic. I haven't seen much in terms of extroverted ethics. He doesn't need to be a very compelling speaker. And it sounds to me he's chosen an approach which sort of means he doesn't have to do much of the extroverted ethics himself. He doesn't have to appeal to shareholders, appeal to public views all the time. Yeah, it's more about his own privacy, his own tempo, doing things quite peacefully his way. So the stubbornness of the logic and the sensation is there without pressure on him in terms of the extroverted ethics.
Games takes nothing on the first $1 million in sales, and even the famously generous Microsoft only takes 12% of sales on its store.
There is the extrovert intuition, as you see, with the quite broad range of different, still quite technology-oriented stuff he's doing.
Prices, if I was a game developer that needed to make $7 per copy sold in order to,
but there's a certain stability and deliberateness with which Valve is the centerpiece of it. And everything else sort of spans off from it as sort of extra interest he does in his own time because he's interested.
Sales has 0 fees. Customers would get cheaper games, the devs would get the same amount of money. It's one of the clearest win-wins ever. Except that Valve is well aware of this and forces developers to agree to what's known as a most favored nation clause in its agreements. An MFN, a most favored nation clause, basically means that a developer can't sell their game substantially cheaper elsewhere if it's also listed on Steam. It means that even if another platform cuts the fees that they take, the developers aren't allowed to pass on the savings from that deal to the end consumer. If a game is $10 on Steam, it has to be about $10 everywhere else. And very few games can survive without being on Steam, given that they have all of the customers. It's created a setup where Steam looks like the best deal, in part because it literally pressures developers and publishers to not offer a better deal elsewhere. And while most competitor platforms actually offer pretty generous deals to smaller developers, Steam does the opposite. Games that sell millions and millions of copies end up receiving a better split. This isn't because, I don't know, Activision needs the money, but it's because Valve understands as a company that the big developers are the ones who have the true bargaining power, the ones who could have significant impact if they try to leave. And by offering them these generous deals, they encourage them to stay on Steam from day one. Indie developers who sell 50, 100, or even 10,000 copies of a game don't have a fraction of the bargaining power. And so there's no need to offer them a better deal. I mean, this is like clearly pretty anti-competitive if you ask me. But from a marketing and PR sense, it's actually genius. Steam always ends up having the best price possible on its platforms. The customers always get what looks like a reasonable deal. And Valve does.
He just created almost the ideal stable system.
More expensive than expected. The blame falls squarely on the developers. Meanwhile, other platforms can't easily compete on price and have to compete on other things, which is why you see exclusive releases as a method of competition. But people hate having to download a whole separate app to play one game. Because it's annoying and it feels anti-competitive. It feels like the wrong way to compete in this case. And by the way, I'm not like pretending that the Epic Games Store is like some pariah of the gaming industry, okay? They would definitely be doing the same shit if they could, right? They're just annoyed that they can't. They're actually really annoyed that they can't because the CEO of Epic Games has been on this warpath for many years now. And the reality is their app is not the best, not just because of these anti-competitive practices that they're subject to, but also because the Epic Games Store is not very good. And many of these alternatives are just not very good to use. They can be buggy and laggy, while Steam ultimately, at the end of the day, provides a very functional service. The point that I'm actually making here is that Steam has monopoly power in this market. And they're using this power to do what all private monopolies always end up doing, restricting consumer choice and restricting competition. Until recently, Apple did a very similar thing. They'd take 30% of all in-app purchases that were done on Apple devices. Apps were literally not even allowed to tell their users that Apple was just taking 30% of the money and that you could sign up through Google Chrome or whatever for a discount. Apple wasn't taking this 30% fee because they were providing some amazing extra service when you bought your Fortnite V-Bucks. They did it because, much like Steam, they have completely unreasonable levels of control over the mobile app market, and they can get away with it. And it was a major legal issue until earlier this year when a long-standing lawsuit forced Apple to let developers offer alternate payment methods with lower fees. And in my opinion, this is basically identical to what Steam does in gaming. Except they were smart enough to realize that they needed to keep the biggest publishers on.
Destroying pubs
but
but doing nothing.
Too far. Instead of trying to get 30% out of literally everyone, like Apple did,
rather than trying to take on capitalism in some sort of aggressive way, it's just creating a system whereby there's no benefit to being to resorting to piracy. It's a very non-extrovertation way of solving the issue. Wow, what's this one?
Now, for all of the smoke and mirrors, Valve isn't a faceless corporate entity. Quite the opposite. Its face is very well known and loved.
Yay, Mule!
The point is, he looks like a total nerd. That's kind of the appeal. He's just like one of you. He's another nerd guy. He games just like you game, and everyone loves him for it. No.
Welcome to the International.
Yeah, that's what it is. He's just a nerd.
Valve's CEO
That's so successful. So the PR does itself for. He doesn't have to do any work in it. He just is a nerd, and that works. Everyone loves it. He's having a great time doing it too.
I'd like to say hello to all the GameStar readers.
Valve's journey began in 1996 when Gaben left Microsoft with fellow employee Mike Harrington to found their own gaming development company.
We both thought that there was a pretty good chance that we were going to go take a stab at this for a year, fail miserably, and then tuck our tails between our legs and go back to working at Microsoft.
The pair was convinced that video games were the future of entertainment and were eager to throw their hats into the ring.
We're going to be seeing these guys a lot tonight. Valve Software.
Harrington eventually split from Valve, leaving the company entirely in Gaben's capable hands. Sitting at over a $4 billion net worth, Valve's president somehow manages to project and maintain a down-to-earth everyman image.
Down-to-earth everyman image,
as publicly sharing his email, should anyone want to get in touch.
Email me at gaben@valvesoftware.com and let me know about your rampage. I'm not wearing underwear.
As unlikely as direct communication with a billion seems, the email address is, in fact, real and functional, and a lucky few get a response now and then.
However, following that story hitting some mainstream media attention...
So very, again, no, I'm above you, I'm inaccessible sort of stuff. Very horizontal. It's very alpha.
Answered the question that it was 13 full-time employees and it was a people thing, not a hardware thing.
Valve is often hailed for their contribution to the growth of the gaming industry, particularly the creation and development of...
He hasn't created many games. They haven't done that many things. But the few things they have done have been very well integrated and very systemically designed in a way that everything just flows for a good experience.
Support you where we can, but otherwise, please get on with it.
Just like Valve itself, Steam has changed dramatically over the years. It was first introduced on September 12, 2003, as a way for gamers to keep their Valve titles patched and up to date. At a time when only about 20% of people had a broadband connection in their home, requiring users to be connected constantly was a tall order, and so Steam floundered. Before Steam was even a twinkle in Gaben's eye, Valve put out a few titles, most notably the universally acclaimed FPS phenomenon, Half-Life.
Good morning, and welcome to the Black Mesa Transit System. This automated train is provided for the security and convenience of the Black Mesa Research Facility personnel.
Half-Life ushered in a new generation of FPS games, receiving numerous Best Game awards, and even leading to Counter-Strike, which was originally a mod of that game.
It was just one of many mods.
Oh, really? It was a mod?
Dropped out of Half-Life being the most amazing game engine.
The fan base clamored for a sequel, and Valve delivered.
Rise and shine, Mr. Freeman. Rise and shine.
Half-Life 2 was incredible. Such a revolutionary game from a lot of perspectives. And the thing that really stands out about it is that just like Half-Life 1 totally changed first-person shooters, Half-Life 2 just did it again. It did that same kind of roller coastery style of like, you're just being pushed through levels, but it had things that were totally different, levels that really stood out. Obviously, the gravity gun is like the huge standout that everybody remembers, but there are plenty of things in Half-Life 2 that made people just...
I think LII. I think that's pretty clear at this point. So let's move on now. Let's move on to Sir David Attenborough. All right. So, Sir David Attenborough. Who I believe is now 100 years old, born 18th of May 1926. So 8th of May 1926, he turned 100 two days ago. He's a natural historian, British broadcaster, renowned for producing and narrating wildlife documentaries that have shaped public understanding of the natural world. So he joined in 1952, rising from training producer to controller of BBC Two before returning to on-screen work with series like Zoo Quest, which combined travelogue and live animal capture and groundbreaking Life on Earth. So it's interesting. He rose up to controller of BBC Two, and then decided, no, I'm not going to stay control. I'm going to go out and do more stuff like Zoo Quest. I'm going to do more sort of live animal stuff. That's what he really wanted to do. A vocal environmental advocate, he's emphasized biodiversity loss and habitat destruction driven by human expansion. He's done a lot of that. Yes. Is likened unchecked human proliferation to a plague, warning that nature will enforce limits through scarcity if voluntary restraint fails, a perspective rooted in empirical observations of resource depletion and species decline across his fieldwork. His views prioritizing demographic pressures over per capita consumption in affluent nations have provoked criticism for perceived insensitivity to developing world context and echoes of past coercive policies, but supported by data on absolute population impacts. He has critiqued over-reliance on alarmist rhetoric, favouring evidence-based appeals to sustain public engagement without desensitization. From an early age, he exhibited profound interest in the natural world, regularly collecting fossils, stones, and biological specimens during explorations in the Leicestershire countryside and Charnwood Forest. His pursuits were supported by visits to the Newark Museum in Leicester, where displays of prehistoric finds filled curiosity into paleontology and evolutionary history. Okay. Education, like natural history, fossils. He's supported by his father, who facilitated access to geological sites and provided guidance and classification. His hands-on engagement fosters a systematic approach to observing and cataloguing biological and geological materials in the ground of his latest scientific pursuits. He enrolled at Clare College, Cambridge, studied natural sciences, focusing on zoology and geology. Graduated from Masters of Arts degree in 1947. He's deep into his expertise in evolutionary biology and taxonomy, influenced by Cambridge's emphasis on empirical observation and specimen-based research. He then completed national service as a lieutenant in the Royal Navy, stationed primarily in South Wales, where duties involved officer training but afforded limited opportunity to pursue personal interest in natural history. Upon demobilisation, he briefly worked as an editorial assistant at an educational publishing firm in London, applying his scientific knowledge to textbook production before transitioning to broadcasting. So there's a preference there for direct empirical engagement over abstract theorizing, shaping his lifelong commitment to documenting observable natural phenomena. Potentially a bit of extroverted logic here. So he entered the BBC. He was a radio talks producer. He was a training producer in a television talks department. He produced factual programs focused on topics such as archaeology, natural history. His on-screen debut with Zoo Quest, a groundbreaking natural history series. The program originated from expeditions organized by London Zoo. They'd film and capture live animals for the zoo's collection. Attenborough assumed the presenting role, combining narration with hands-on field work. The series was also groundbreaking for its introduction of transitions between pre-recorded film and live studio segments. ZooQuest proved highly popular, expanded to destinations including various islands in Indonesia, where native religious rituals were observed. Okay. He was appointed controller of BBC Two, succeeding Michael Peacock, at a time when the channel was establishing its identity as a more innovative and culturally ambitious alternative to BBC One. And his leadership, it pioneered regular colour television broadcasts in the UK, achieving this 3 weeks ahead of West German competitors. His tenure emphasised high-quality programming, commissioning Kenneth Clark's Civilization, a 13-part exploration of Western art and culture, the Forsyte Saga, which drew record audiences, and Graham Chapman's Monty Python's Flying Circus. So a bit more innovative, a bit more intellectual, you could say, a bit more cultural, sophisticated. He assumed responsibility for scheduling and content across the BBC One and BBC Two until 1972. He's shaping the corporation's output during a period of expanding audience reach and technological transition. After 8 years in management, he resigned to return to programme making as a freelance contributor to the BBC. Because he was personally averse to desk-bound duties and longed to resume fieldwork in natural history. His executive administration preserved his influence on BBC natural history output without the constraints of executive oversight, but drew mixed reactions from colleagues who valued his programming acumen but understood his preference for direct creative engagement. So he could do all that programming stuff, but he preferred to be out there directly engaged in things rather than be sort of in power over things. Evolution of his production style and innovations. His early productions featured an adventurous participant observer style with on-screen presence, black and white footage captured during expeditions to remote locations. From Life on Earth, he shifted to off-screen narrative, enabling greater emphasis on wildlife itself. Also had adapted scuba gear, expanding access to marine behaviors previously inaccessible. Then the productions evolved with extensive field work, cams, macro lenses, there's leaked with high definition filming, helicopter mounted cameras. So he doesn't want to be, let's say, the center of the attention. Let's say he's perfectly happy to be just observing the animals themselves and developing, as you can see, new technologies to better do that, rather than making himself the front and center figure in the presenting these sorts of things. He wants to go out and observe the animals and study the animals. There's a whole environmental campaign, all about sustainability, that sort of thing. Critiques of alarmist narratives. Jason saying very Delta. I agree. It's very, very, very Delta. He's consistently supported the principle of public service broadcasting, for the BBC is central for delivering high-quality, non-commercial content to audiences. Controversies, population control advocacy, and Malthusian critiques. He's long advocated for measures to curb human population and growth as a prerequisite for environmental sustainability. Well, that's no longer really the issue, is it? It's more the other way around. He's described humanity as a plague on the earth, for goodness. Overpopulation could lead to resource collapse in decades absent intervention. At the World Economic Forum, he warned that the planet can't cope. Current growth trajectories, attributing part of the surge to improved longevity. He has critiqued aid efforts that extend lifespans without addressing birth rates. His positions draw Malthusian critiques for presuming fixed resource limits that historical data contradicts, as global population has quadrupled since 1926. When he was born without the mass famines predicted by Thomas Malthus in 1798. Detractors argue his views overlook how market-driven technological advance and denser populations correlate with greater resource efficiency and prosperity, not scarcity. Critics allege that he has selectively portrayed animal behaviors in ways that emphasize conflict and predation over cooperation, potentially skewing viewer perception towards a more violent view of nature known as red in tooth and claw. Also had accusations of anthropomorphism, attributing human-like emotions, narratives, and motivations to animals to create dramatic soap opera storylines. But that makes it more entertaining. In 2018 series Dynasties, for instance, episodes frame animal family dynamics with emotive music and commentary implying human-style familial bonds and individual agency, drawing criticism for blurring lines between factual depiction and fictional drama. And there's also bias towards charismatic vertebrate species, such as mammals and birds, while marginalizing invertebrates and less visually appealing organisms. So, okay, he does stuff which he knows is going to be good for public consumption as well, basically. He's advocated curbing the excesses of capitalism as essential for environmental restoration. Critics, including economists in the Cato Institute, argue this overlooks empirical evidence that profit-driven innovation under capitalism is okay. It's controversially joked in an interview that we could shoot then President Donald Trump to address climate skepticism. Okay. Right. Anything else? He attained the age of 99 with exceptional longevity. That's very true. No. Now he's 100, not 99. Attenborough credits dietary modifications for supporting his vitality, particularly a marked reduction in red meat intake, encompassing beef, lamb, pork, veal, mutton, venison, and goat, while retaining fish and dairy such as cheese. He's shifted towards a predominantly plant-based approach over recent years. Okay. I also got an interview of David Attenborough. Maybe let's look at Zoo Quest first, actually. I want to see what that's like. In color. Awesome. Let's do an interview. Hmm.
60 Minutes Rewind.
For nearly 70 years, Sir David Attenborough has been exploring the team of Britain is 94 years old now, but age and the pandemic haven't slowed him down. He's coming out with a new book. They are, of which...
Let's see how different he might have been. Let's see. 974.
I once
Okay.
had to. I was going to say sundial.
Anything else of him? 1980. Ooh, interesting. He is a highly charismatic individual who has become very beloved through his different programs. He's almost seen as a national treasure. But someone who clearly aspires towards that empirical understanding of things. And seems to certainly at this point in 1980, presenting himself as the scientist who understands how things work from a practical, empirical point of view, thereby dispelling ideology or dispelling more sort of theological or abstract theoretical positions on things. What do we see here? Oh, that'll be interesting.
Tales told by those
You know what? Let's go to this one. Let's go to this interview. There we go, something from the 1970s. Side, he actually said, look, I'm happy that someone else is handling all that stuff. I'm interested in the ideas. I want to show people all these amazing things. And that's what he's talking about here as his point of emphasis. So you have this aspect of him, and then you have that going in and getting all sort of factual and empirical and scientific in a sort of slightly overdone kind of way, which strikes me, I think, more as being a mobilizing function. I think we're getting here is the ego and the demonstrative. It's still very much in the background. There's frequently there is a sense behind this of, okay, I'm exploring these I'm exploring these ideas. I'm being adventurous and going into the perspective of different animals and different situations, almost anthropomorphizing them, really converting what could be just a purely factual scientific experience into a very almost like a personalized adventure or journey of those particular animals. So he's personalizing the animals to some degree. It's not purely factual, and he's doing it in a way which is frequently, consistently thinking also about how is it going to be received? How can it be received well? How can it come over to people in a more gripping and emotionally investing way, whilst its value still being very much more about sort of empiricism, practicality, efficiency, self-sustainability, adventure. What can we learn from animals? How can we be better people? How can we sustain ourselves and be more sustainable rather than do nasty things to animals? All those sorts of delta values coming in there. It does strike me that IEE is the most likely typing from this. I see a lot of extroverted ethics in the background. He's when asked about being a very administrative person, it's really for him about the extroverted intuition, and very much downplaying his own emphasis in terms of practicality, and his own emphasis on solutions and how things work, but more about going around throwing around ideas for people to be doing. So, yeah, I'm thinking IEE at this point. Let me see if there's any more to this interview. Right. Okay. Okay. So I'm thinking IE at this point. I don't think there's another. You don't see much introverted sensation to him. There isn't a groundedness to him. He's quite sort of flighty. Here's another one. BBC Two's Purpose. I want to see this quickly, and then we can move on. It's sort of him in his administration.
Program altogether, on the whole.
I haven't got it. I don't watch it, so I don't know.
I like BBC Two, but I don't like ITV because there's too many adverts in it.
Years at the top. With BBC One and go to BBC Two for those very specialist things which made all the difference. And those people actually on that.
He still does not look like he's relaxed at all.
Right, it's exactly what I wanted. Yes, I think it's great, but I only go there for 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 things a week. Now, if you wanted to make BBC Two get exactly the same audience as BBC
A very nervous energy.
just change you would put on the sort of programs.
Oh, for goodness sake.
And what is the point of that? Nothing whatsoever. The point of BBC Two was that it actually enabled you to
Right, stop it. I'm out. Okay. Ah. Hmm. Okay. Okay, everyone, we're back. We're back. Good. So, I was saying before that I thought IE made the most sense. I think we've got quite a consistent picture of it here, where even in his role as, the controller for the BBC Two, the most administrative role, the least IE role you'd expect of him, he is doing it for very IE reasons. Which is, seeing the BBC Two as the thing which does all the other alternative stuff. Where you've got the mainstream BBC One, but BBC Two is all the specialist stuff you can go look at to go into that particular area of interest to you, whatever that may be. And then seeing himself as someone who can sort of just get all these different producers to go into all sorts of different programs with new ideas, sort of out there stuff. That's what he enjoyed doing. So very Delta extroverted intuition, very much what we would be expecting for an IEE. So yes, I think IE makes the most sense. I think the ethics is strong in this person. I don't think the logic is very strong. And he gets sort of frustrated when his extroverted logic attempts don't seem to ring true. He can't really engage in the introverted logic, as can be seen in that debate with that creationist. And it's sort of very much trying too hard, explaining and coming across for why things are the way are, because the science says this, the science says that, whatever it is. It does strike me as a sort of very concerted mobilizing function attempt rather than a stronger leading function attempt. And meanwhile, we don't see much introverted sensation, except as a value in terms of sustainability and living within your means and all that sort of stuff, but no real embodying of introverted sensation. So we see a great deal of very nervous energy in this person. All right. So yes, I think IEE makes the most sense. Let's move on now to someone else. Who was the third person? It was Shigeru Miyamoto. Let's look at Shigeru Miyamoto. Thank you very much, of Adventure 6004. Shigeru Miyamoto. Ah, right. So this is the inventor of Mario. A Japanese video game designer, director, producer, and executive at Nintendo, who has worked since 1977, coming to serve as executive fellow and representative director. He's known as often called the father of modern video games, renowned for creating Donkey Kong, the Mario series, and Legend of Zelda. He was born in Sonobe in Kyoto Prefecture. He grew up exploring nearby woods and caves, things that later inspired the adventurous worlds of his games like The Legend of Zelda. He joined Nintendo, then transitioned from playing cards to electronic entertainment. His breakthrough came with Donkey Kong, where he not only designed the game, but also created its characters, including the plumber Jumpman, later renamed Mario, turning Nintendo into a global arcade powerhouse amid the early 1980s video game crash. Okay. He's another sort of person who likes exploring. Wonderful bamboo forest, cedar grows, pine stands. An idea of gaming and play as adventure. Created his own manga, joined a school club dedicated to the medium. Become a professional comic artist. He's hired primarily for his skills in product design, rather than experience in video games or programming. Then he played what did he do? He shifted focus to GameCube. Let's go a bit further back. So, then Super Nintendo 3D Revolution. The pioneering effort of Super Mario 64. He extended his 3D innovations to the Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. He continued innovating in the GameCube with Super Mario Sunshine. So a very innovative person. Creative philosophy, creating games with a universal appeal. targeting audiences of all ages and backgrounds by prioritizing accessible experiences over intricate storytelling. To emphasize that Nintendo's characters and gameplay foster family bonding, finding a warm feeling that I was able to enjoy playing or watching without barriers posed by complex narratives. Central to his methodology is an emphasis on intuitive controls and trial and error learning to cultivate pure fun rather than photorealistic simulations. He designs controls to be intuitive and easy to pick up, so people can quickly grasp mechanics and derive joy from responsive actions without steep learning curves. Trial and error forms the core of player engagement, where experimentation builds an interactive mental world, allowing users to test solutions, observe outcomes, and iterate, which he calls the true canvas of design, distinct from mere visual representation. There's enjoyment and creativity over realism, yes. He builds iterative prototyping, beginning with hands-on testing using physical models and sketches before any coding, to refine ideas from the player's perspective. So less about the technicality, more about the experience, more about the feeling that you get from doing something. He's described Nintendo's approach as akin to a talent agency, managing a roster of iconic characters like Mario and Zelda, emphasizing their versatile evolution across games, films, and parks to sustain broad appeal and culture. So definitely a sense of extroverted ethics is apparent here, but also a valuing, at least, of extrovert intuition, potentially it being even a stronger element. Right now, I'm somewhere between maybe, well, IE, but also maybe ESE or SEI at this point. He resides in a house near Nintendo's headquarters, but maintains a low-profile lifestyle, focusing on family privacy despite his global fame. He's a bit of a normal dad at home. He has a deep passion for manga, comics, and animation. Reading collecting materials as a primary leisure pursuit. Feeling engaged in drawing and doodling. Just playing guitar and banjo. Enjoys gardening. Yep. So like a judicious, ethical, with some extroverted ethics in there. Let's see if we can get an interview. Shigeru Miyamoto. How he designs the games. Look at this.
This is Shigeru Miyamoto. If you've played video games any time in the past 30 years, you're probably familiar with his work. Donkey Kong, Zelda, Star Fox, and then, of course, this guy. It's me, Mario. When Miyamoto makes games, he always tries to do things differently than other designers. Here he is back in 1998, explaining why he wasn't focused on online gaming.
Avoids trends, goes off, does his own thing.
Adding small in-game purchases to Mario for iPhone in 2016. Miyamoto has helped define a lot of what makes a video game great. So, how does he do it?
やっぱりね、達成感だと思うんですね。で、達成感にはいろんなことがあると思うんですけど、まあ、一つはクリアするっていうボスを倒すとか、ゴールに行くという達成感もあるんですけども。
In 1981, one of Miyamoto's first assignments at Nintendo was to design a replacement for a game called Radar Scope. It performed really poorly in the US, leaving the company with 2,000 unsold arcade units, and this is what he came up with. Miyamoto based the story on the love triangle in Popeye, between a bad guy, a hero, and a damsel in distress.
He starts with relationships.
The rights to those characters, Miyamoto replaced them with a gorilla, a carpenter, and his girlfriend. In later games, that carpenter became a plumber, and his name changed from Mr. Video to Jumpman, and then to Mario, after this guy, the landlord of a Nintendo warehouse near Seattle. This is one of the first times that a video game's plot and characters were designed before the programming.
ビデオゲームってもともと技術者が作ったんですね。
He's not the programmer guy. That's a key thing here. He is not the nerdy programmer.
僕は工業デザイナー。
He's the peoply creative.
アーティストとかいう。
He's the artist.
がリードして作るようになったのが多分僕の世代だ。
That change in approach came at a key time for video games. When Donkey Kong was first released in 1981, the video game market in North America was on the verge of collapse. It was saturated with a lot of different consoles, and the boom in home computers made a lot of people question why they would want a separate device just to play games.
He's like
Games like
David Attenborough. If David Attenborough did Gabe Newell's job.
Sellers.
で、そのために僕はその動機を作るためになんか何をしたらいいのかっていう状況を見せる。まあマリオなら右へ右へ走っていけばゴールがあるって、ドンキーコングならさらわれた彼女を助けるためにそこまで登っていくっていう。
A lot of Miyamoto's genius can be seen in the first level of Super Mario Bros. This is probably the most iconic level in video game history. It's designed to naturally teach you the game mechanics while you play. If you look at a breakdown, there's a lot of really subtle design work going on here. Though Mario is usually at the center of the screen, in this first scene he starts at the far left. All the empty space to the right of him gives you a sense of where to go. Now this character's look and movement suggest it's harmful, but don't worry, if you run into it, you'll just start the game over, without much of a penalty. Next you see gold blocks with question marks. These are made to look intriguing, and once you hit one, you're rewarded. That then encourages you to hit the second block, which releases a mushroom. Even if you're scared now of what this might be, the positioning of the first obstacle makes it just about guaranteed that you're going to run into this thing. And once you do, Mario gets bigger and stronger. And just like that, you've learned all the basic rules of the game without having to read a single word.
あとは何でしょう。やっぱりそこへ入り込んでしまうっていう自分がやっぱりヒーローになった気分になる、勇者になった気分になるって、本当に泣いてしまうとかそういう思いで。
So emotive.
Video game
Again.
has a lot to do with the controls. The more precisely you can move your character, the more you feel like you're part of the story. And Nintendo has always been a pioneer with controllers. It was the first to have the classic setup of the directional pad on the left and the buttons on the right, the first to have left and right shoulder buttons, the first to have a 360-degree thumbstick, and the first to
Always
bring
the
motion
first.
control to the mass market. But
The
with
most
2016's
innovative.
Super Mario Run, Nintendo, for the first time, made a game for a controller it didn't design, the iPhone.
まあ、要は考えるんですけどね、考えて仲間と議論するんですけども、やっぱり例えばスーパーマリオのゲームでいうと、もう僕たちはずっと面白いと思って作ってるんですよね。だんだんと遊ばなくなっていく。で、そうするとなぜ遊ばなくなるのかっていうと難しいかな。
The Wii U flopped when it came out in 2012, and Nintendo 3DS sales are far below those of its predecessor. But the number of American gamers playing on mobile phones has doubled to more than 164 million between 2011 and 2015. You can kind of think of Super Mario Run as a shift from immersiveness to accessibility.
でそこをどんどん積み上げていったので、結構初めて遊ぶ人から上級者までいろんな遊び方ができる遊びができると。
And that's kind of been Miyamoto's design philosophy from the very start. Make fun games that everybody can play. The rest is in our hands.
These controls direct the characters. The better your eye-hand coordination, the better you do.
Right. Let's see what else we can see here.
World
War One. We've all read.
It's all about what is the person experiencing, putting myself into their mindset whilst playing this game.
Nature to us. In this modern age of iterative entertainment, it's almost impossible to convey the magnitude of the leap Super Mario Bros. Represented compared to everything else that came before it. World War One introduced game design principles and a geometry of motion so perfectly calculated that it endures as one of the great works of the art form to this very day. But how was this miracle performed? Well, let us tell you, with the help of its creator, Shigeru Miyamoto.
そしてもう一つ大事なことが、こんな話全部してしまうとなんか夢がないような気もするんです。いいですか？一旦しまう。
Before Mario arrived in 1985, the closest thing to the iconic opening level that we had was the stiff but serviceable screen flipping pitfall. And there was also the gorgeous but terrible side-scrolling Pac-Man. Both were early essays on game design. Pitfall presented a two-layered jungle with plenty of enemies and obstacles to jump over, but its flip-screen progression, huge non-linear map, strict time limits, and unintuitive treasure placement made it feel more like a puzzle to solve than a world to explore. Packlands scrolled fairly cleanly in one direction, but the layout of the levels was haphazard and frustrating, and the controls felt maddening. In comparison, Mario was like exploring a realised, unified, and diverse world. Every step revealed new threats and sights, but in order to achieve this legendary standard, it first needed solid foundations, and that's where World 1-1 really comes into its own, teaching you the basics in the most elegant manner possible. Super Mario Bros. Isn't nearly as big as it feels. In fact, World 1-1 measures only about 15 screens, including the underground room.
Yeah,
It feels
true.
much bigger because over 2 or 3 screens, the tone of the terrain changes. From the intro section to leaping over pipes, to platforming, to pits. And yet within that tiny space, you have every power-up that's in the game. A hidden multi-coin block, a pair of traversal pipes, an invisible one-off 2 enemy varieties, and a secret fireworks display. But perhaps the biggest secret of 1-1 is that it's actually a school, and the course is Mario 101. In a 2015 interview of Eurogamer, Shigeru Miyamoto and Takashi Tezuka talked about this extraordinary degree of thought that went into the design, beginning with World 1-1's iconic opening, a tiny Mario facing an empty plane. They then faced the issue of how to teach the players several skills at once. How to avoid enemies, how to destroy enemies, how question blocks work, and how to tell an enemy Goomba from a helpful mushroom. Surprisingly, all 3 are accomplished within just the first few steps of this opening level.
True.
で、これでガンって歩いていって、なんか、まあ、何か出てきたら言うんでしょう。で、こう。
Running forward into the first Goomba kills you, a lesson a player only needs to learn once before discovering that they're much safer in the air. Then moving forward, the player discovers some low bricks and question blocks.
で、なんか、ハテナってついてると叩くだってねって、叩くとポインって言って嬉しいなって次のハテナをポインって叩くと出てから。
Tapping the second block releases a mushroom that slides away.
It's always about, oh, they might want to do this, they might want to do this. I want to do this just in case they might want to do this.
So the mushroom naturally hits
Speculation about what people might want to do.
Matter of seconds, you've learned how both rewards and danger work throughout the rest of the game.
で、こうなると突然こう、ドンドンドンってこう。
It kept stimulating what the player would do, even when one section knew
マリオがどんなゲームかがわかる。
what the game's about.
All details mattered. The opening screen's first enemy was supposed to be a Koopa Trooper, but teaching the player the jump and then the kick movement necessary to overcome it worked less well at the beginning of the game than they'd hoped. So they invented the simple to stop Goomba to help players understand the basics first. Another valuable lesson, holding B to run before a long jump, is taught safely by 2 gaps later in 1-1.
で、この辺りから B ダッシュをちょっとずつ教えるように。で、あ、そうか。それで初めて穴があるんですね。で、穴は飛び越すんですけど、こうなってると上の方でちょっと深い穴で、大体落ちるんですね、こうして。落ちても大丈夫なようにしたら、そう。こう、自然に人のしそうなことをこう、やりながらちょっとずつ教えていって、で、何かというと、多分遊ぶ人は自分が何をしてるか分かることが一番大事だと思うんですよ。だから最初のステージっていうのは、自分が何をしてるのか分かって、その後は分かった人はもう遊んでくれるので、自由に遊んでくれっていうふうにいつもゲームを作る。
Miyamoto explains that the tutorial nature of early stages usually comes only after the team has crafted more sophisticated levels.
What's this? Come on.
皆さん、こんにちは。宮本です。では、次に行きましょうか。
Although many are labeled with the moniker legend, you deserve it more than Shigeru Miyamoto. His influence on video games is perhaps more far-reaching than any other individual. And in the 45 plus years he's been at Nintendo, he's been responsible for creating many of the world's most loved games. To many, he is Nintendo. But on the eve of Tokyo Game Show, he's talking about the most un-Nintendo-like thing the company has ever created. You could say that we're sort of doing something that we are not supposed to do. If ex-president of Nintendo Hiroshi Yamauchi would hear this, I think he would tell us to stop immediately. Surprisingly, he is talking about the newly opened Nintendo Museum, a two-story interactive celebration of everything Nintendo, situated in Kyoto, Japan, where the company was founded. IGN visited the museum recently, and just like Nintendo, it's a place where fun is at the heart of
Thing is, what I'm not really getting from him is the extroverted logic.
to its identity. Nintendo always has a
Not getting
certain
much of
way
that yet.
doing things. Previously, the company always shied away from talking about its past. With the gaming landscape constantly changing, though, it decided now was the time to celebrate all of its achievements, but only if it felt authentically Nintendo. Nintendo is a company that connects with its consumers through products. We do not promote the company itself, only the products. We might be talking about how old Mario has turned, but we don't talk about how many units a certain game has sold. That's what Nintendo has traditionally been doing. But the environment has changed, and we started to revisit that thought. That's not to say the Nintendo Museum is a mecca that only celebrates Nintendo's commercial success. In fact, it's nothing like that. But from the decades of history on display, it's clear to see that the one thing that really matters to Nintendo are the games. I feel that the only way to connect and communicate with the consumer is through the product, shares Miyamoto. It's a position that echoes the thoughts of the ex-Nintendo president, Hiroshi Yamauchi, who ran the company for over 50 years and was responsible for turning it into the global entertainment success it is today. Yamauchi used to say that a lot of companies put a lot of effort and resources into sales to make sure that the product is advertised well so that it reaches greater sales. However, Yamauchi's own philosophy was the opposite. He believed that if you need to over-advertise something to sell, not selling it at all is better. A museum that showcases the story of the company behind the games and consoles is almost antithetical to the philosophy of show, not tell. So it's no wonder Miyamoto thinks his old boss might not be in favor of the project if he was still alive today. But since its founding in 1889, Nintendo's century-old history has begun to pile up. Perhaps sensing its own age, the idea came to turn an old Nintendo factory into its first ever museum. Nintendo has a lot of material that we have accumulated over the years. Some of that is deteriorating, and some of it is...
I'm wondering about ESE for him instead of IE.
The importance of preserving these materials. The preservation extends to the building itself too, and Miyamoto thought that it would be very Nintendo-like to not have a flashy museum, but to simply repurpose this building and this land that we had as an effort to store and preserve the products that we have made in the past. Rather than simply tell a strange historical story that stretches from 1889 to today, Nintendo enlisted the help of its various technicians and employees with various knowledge and interests that go beyond just video games to create a museum that only Nintendo can.
Right. Let's see this.
He created the most iconic video game character of all time, and his games have sold over 1 billion copies all around the world. By 2006, he'd become so valuable to Nintendo that, for his own safety and the company's peace of mind, they told him he wasn't allowed to ride his bike to work anymore. In 2011, rumors of his retirement sent Nintendo's stock plummeting over $500 million in a single day. This is the story of how a child growing up in Japan became the most influential video game designer of all time. This is Shigeru Miyamoto. He was born November 16th, 1952, in a small rural town called Sonobe in Kyoto Prefecture. His father was an English teacher at a local school, and on weekends, he took his family to the big city to watch Western films, especially Disney movies. Shigeru was a curious child, spending his days adventuring through the lush forests, mountains, and castle ruins surrounding his village. When he got home, he liked to watch puppet shows on television, like Hirokori Hayutenjima, and looking back as an adult, he even said that one of its characters, Don Gabancho, might have even influenced the creation of Mario.
From a young age, Shigeru loved entertaining the people around him and would stitch together handmade puppets, put on shows for his classmates. In middle school, he joined the basketball team, but after getting into a fight with one of his teammates, he quit to establish a manga club with his friends, which he continued until graduation. He dreamt of someday becoming a manga.
I wonder about ESC for him, to be honest.
Like Shotaro Ishinomori, who'd created Kamen Rider and worked on manga like Astro Boy. In high school, Shigeru branched out and joined a music club, learning to play the guitar and developing a strong affection for the banjo. He loved music ever since his parents surprised him with a ukulele for Christmas as a kid. When he was older, he even built his own ukulele out of wooden yarn, but made it just a neck and no body, so he could practice late into the night without ever waking his family. In college, he joined a band and got into bluegrass, which he still plays to this very day. But Shigeru knew that not everybody can become a famous musician, so ultimately chose a more pragmatic path with industrial design. He studied hard and got his degree, although he did have to repeat a year, much to his parents' disappointment. Shigeru didn't have a job lined up after graduating from Kanazawa College of Art in 1977, but one company in Kyoto did catch his eye while he was job hunting, a card and toy manufacturer called Nintendo. He submitted his application as an industrial designer, but Nintendo turned him down, saying they just weren't interested. But Shigeru refused to take no for an answer. His father had a mutual friend with Nintendo's then president, Hiroshi Yamauchi, and after some string pulling, Shigeru got a one-on-one interview with President Yamauchi. During the interview, he showed off some toys he'd made and left such a good impression on Yamauchi that he was hired as Nintendo's very first industrial designer.
Quite driven in the initiative taking and doing that.
Find that President Yamauchi applied for a patent on one of the toys Shigeru brought into the interview and never told him. Miyamoto's earliest assignments were mostly designing packaging for Disney-themed board games and various other Nintendo products, but as luck would have it, he found himself in the exact right place at the exact right time. After his first year at Nintendo, Space Invaders took the world by storm.
He is, whereas
$1 million.
David Attenborough so rose to the top of the BBC Two, but then sort of left it to sort of do his own thing. Miyamoto hasn't done this. He is very much stuck with the company, been very much a company man, doing things. This is a Nintendo way of doing things, that sort of thing.
Game Block Kuzushi, containing 6 variations of the Atari game Breakout. The Block Kuzushi was one of Nintendo's earliest attempts at breaking into the then booming video game industry. Miyamoto also received his first software assignment, a game called Seesaw, which, despite its simplicity, he was never able to finish. Years later, Miyamoto reminisced about the unfinished game in Nintendo Official Magazine, explaining that Seesaw was actually the brainchild of Gunpei Yokoi, the man who created the Game Boy, who was both Miyamoto's boss as well as his mentor. He said, Seesaw, that was Gunpei Yokoi's idea. He wanted a game where you bounce in the seesaw and bounce up off of it, but we couldn't figure out how to do it. It was really difficult. If you get on one end, the other end goes up. And if you hit one end real hard, the other end goes up just as hard. But we couldn't do it. Miyamoto just didn't yet have the skill to execute even this simple concept, although he later revisited the idea to create the lifts in Super Mario Bros. What was once impossible for him eventually became just a tiny slice of his 1985 masterpiece. The first game he ever completed was the 1979 arcade shooter Sheriff, where players controlled a gunslinger on a mission to rescue a woman captured by bandits. It was the first ever Nintendo game with a story centered around the damsel in distress idea, a theme that Miyamoto would later use as an archetype for games like Donkey Kong, Super Mario, and The Legend of Zelda. His next game was the top-down shooter Space Firebird, then the much more successful Radar Scope. In a bid to capitalize on Radar Scope's success, Nintendo of America imported 3,000 arcade cabinets from Nintendo HQ. But the game wasn't nearly as popular in the US as it was in Japan. Nintendo of America only managed to sell about a third of their Radar Scope cabinets, leaving them with millions of dollars worth of unsold product. NOA's president, Minoru Arakawa, was in a panic and asked Yamauchi if there was some way he could convert all of those unsold Radar Scopes into a completely different game. Yamauchi agreed, saddled Yokoi and Miyamoto with the conversion project. Whatever this new game was going to be, it had to run on the exact same hardware as Radar Scope, which forced the two designers to think within strict limitations, but outside the box. At the time, Nintendo was making Popeye products like playing cards and even a Game & Watch, so Miyamoto decided to convert Radar Scope into a Popeye game. The premise was simple and reminiscent of Sheriff. The hero Popeye would rescue the damsel in distress, Olive Oil, from her brutish kidnapper Bluto. Though the license fell through, so Miyamoto had to replace all the Popeye characters with brand new ones. So Olive Oil became Pauline, Bluto was swapped out for Donkey Kong, and Popeye was transformed into an Italian carpenter called Jumpman. Miyamoto devoted himself entirely to the conversion project, telling his friends they wouldn't see him for a few months until the job was done. He worked day and night, and even took baths at work. Later recalling, at the time, I was living in company-owned housing, just across the river from the office. So every day, I was just going back and forth between the office and the company housing. Thank goodness we had a company bathtub. There's also a water boiler that was used to make the Hanafuda playing cards, and the water from this boiler was also used for a bathtub.
He works hard, but he still maintained his comforts even whilst working really hard.
You can hang out there for a long time. It totally saved me. Miyamoto and Yokoi originally planned for the screen to scroll like a cartoon, but those plans fell through when it became clear that Radar Scope's arcade boards were not capable of that. So they decided to make 4 separate screens, sort of like panels in a comic strip. Miyamoto initially wanted Donkey Kong to be played with only a joystick, but Radar Scope's cabinet had both a joystick and one button. It had to be used somehow, so they decided may as well be used for jumping, a decision that went on to have a much bigger impact on the video game industry than they ever could have imagined. Development took 5 months. Then, after all the Radar Scopes were manually converted, Donkey Kong quickly grew into a massive success. Not only did Nintendo of America manage to sell all 2,000 cabinets they were trying to get rid of, but they sold 60,000 more after that, raking in hundreds of millions of dollars in the process. And that was just the first year alone. NOA president Arakawa's biggest problem transformed into his biggest asset. Then, he invested that huge pile of cash into 27 acres of land to expand Nintendo of America into the powerhouse that it is today. As Donkey Kong fever swept the globe, Miyamoto followed up with games like DK Jr., Donkey Kong 3, and Mario Bros. But none of them really managed to recapture the magic of the original. Mario Bros, for example, only sold 3,800 cabinets in the US, and as arcade sales continued to decline, Yamauchi began preparations for Nintendo's next chapter by introducing its first home console, the Famicom.
The Famicom.
He also established a brand new development team called Nintendo Research and Development 4, setting up Miyamoto as its chief producer. R&D 4 got to work crafting games for Famicom, placing a special emphasis on sports titles that they hoped would appeal to as wide an audience as possible. Miyamoto designed baseball, golf, and tennis, all in time for the console's North American launch, where it was there renamed the Nintendo Entertainment System.
And yes.
Miyamoto was a game-making machine, pumping out as many as 8 games.
Wow, okay, so he just did a lot of stuff, basically.
Ice Climber, and as fate would have it, he finally got the chance to make a fully licensed Popeye game. One of the more notable titles was Devil World, which released in Japan and Europe, but famously became the only Miyamoto title that was never released in the US. Well, at least not until 2023, where it finally landed on Nintendo Switch Online. But back in the 80s, Nintendo of America had a policy against religious iconography. So a game where you're fighting the devil using Christian crosses and Bibles, that wasn't going to fly. Devil World's most significant legacy, however, was that it was the first Miyamoto game made together with Takashi Tezuka, who quickly became one of Miyamoto's greatest assets. By the time Miyamoto finished his 20th game, he'd acquired not only the skill and experience, but just as importantly, he now had a team he needed to start a massive new project. A title that would change video games forever and secured his place in the history books. We're talking
Super Mario Bros. Okay.
Brothers. Miyamoto combined everything he'd learned since giving up on Seesaw. The slopes from Donkey Kong, the vines from DK Jr., the bigger characters of Devil World, and horizontal scrolling from Excitebike. Even though
I mean,
Super
he's
Mario Bros.
clearly a very good designer. He doesn't seem that out there, to be honest.
At the same time, based on his adventures as a kid. While Mario was a linear game, Miyamoto wanted to build an open world, recreating the feeling of exploring his hometown village, like the Sonobe River, the Tenjin Mountain, and the ruins of Sonobe Castle. When Super Mario finally hit store shelves in '85, it was praised by critics and fans alike, eventually selling over 40 million copies. The Legend of Zelda launched a few months later, and it took the world by storm all over again, selling 1 million units on its first day and going on to sell.
I did exploration, the idea of sort of going a bit like how in his own rural environment, just exploring, bring it into a video game. It's quite a bit more experiential. I think that's a key thing here. He does have a sort of putting himself into someone else's shoes empathy, but it's combined with an experiential sense of what is it like to stand in this place at this time to experiencing things in this way. And I think that's the key aspect here. It is an empathy, but it's an experiential empathy.
It's much less hands-on, only serving as producer.
It's about seeing a cool idea and showing it to someone else.
Had reached his
It is quite grounded at the same time.
Struck up a relationship with a girl named Yasuko. He eventually married and had a couple of kids with, a son and a daughter. While his personal life was maturing, so was his professional life. Nintendo reorganized his development team, R&D, into a new team called EAD, Entertainment Analysis and Development.
I don't see any extroverted logic here.
Software one. The strategic goal of creating synergies that could give Nintendo an advantage over their competitors, especially their.
And also, the philosophy is less about doing something alternative. It is more about doing something which everyone can access, everyone can enjoy together, which is, I think, is more of an alpha view rather than a delta view.
EAD teamed up with English developers Argonaut Software, the creators of the Super FX chip, developed games like Star Fox that made the use of 3D polygons, with Miyamoto using his love of puppets, particularly.
That's a very good point, Isaac. Yeah,
to come up with the game's
it is showing someone a feeling, showing someone a memory he had, that sort of thing. And it is experiential and emotive.
As 1991. By now, Miyamoto had reached middle age. Fully conscious that he'd entered the back nine of his existence, he decided to take his personal health much more seriously. He quit playing pachinko, a sitting-styled arcade game similar to slot machines, and filled his newfound free time swimming at a local health club. He also quit smoking, but admitted to reporters that he'd accidentally traded one vice for another. He caught himself eating way more sweets. He literally pointed at his gut to show them that the proof was in the pudding. The Nintendo 64 was Miyamoto's first time contributing to a console.
It was that big grin on his face as well.
Several patents, including the N64 controller and memory pack. His biggest focus, however, was bringing the Big N's hugest franchises into the third dimension. At the same time, he was also producing his final Game Boy game, a little indie RPG called Pokemon Red. It's Miyamoto's idea to split the game up into two versions to encourage trading between players, and it was also
so interaction between people. Let's all play together. Get it? That was his idea.
Actually, 151st got slipped in without knowing about it, but that's a whole different story. Miyamoto had a lot of irons in the fire, but finishing Mario 64,
yeah, doing a lot of different things. Definitely extroverted, I think.
Though he was spread so thin that he just couldn't meet the deadline.
Yep.
President Yamauchi had so much faith in Miyamoto that he delayed the console's launch just for him, telling the press, "Game creators can finish games quickly if they compromise, but gamers have sharp eyes. They soon know if the games are compromised." Miyamoto asked for 2 more months, and I gave them to him unconditionally. Yamauchi's faith was well placed. When Mario 64 finally launched, it was met with critical and commercial success, becoming the N64's best-selling game.
That's something like Mario is the way that Mario games are done. It is so ESC. It's full of positive, vibrant energy. Doesn't make a lot of sense, but just really sort of positive, feel good and have fun. It's not too deep, but it is very aesthetically pleasing.
Decade prior, revolutionizing the platformer genre with a brand new Mario, it was time to switch gears and breathe new life into the action-adventure genre with a brand new Zelda. Now, critics loved Mario 64, but there was one complaint that kept bubbling to the surface again.
Cute characters as well, little guys with shells.
Considered making Link's Leap in the 3D a first-person adventure that Miyamoto compared to GoldenEye. But one day his team went to a ninja show for inspiration, and they saw a samurai surrounded on all sides by enemies. Watching with amazement as the samurai switched focus to fight them one at a time, a light bulb went off in their heads, and they came up with a system that supplemented camera control they called Z-targeting. The first of its kind, and a key component in what's been lauded as one of the greatest games of all time. There was also Star Fox 64, F-Zero X, and countless other hits. He oversaw some of the 90s most iconic titles, but unfortunately, the decade came to a close with some of his biggest misses. Nintendo originally announced the N64's disk drive add-on, the 64DD, would launch in late 1996, but after seemingly endless delays, it didn't release until late 1999. And it only managed to sell a humiliating 15,000 units. Miyamoto sank tons of time into games that never saw the light of day, like a breeding simulator called Cabbage. Cabbage was a collaborative effort with Satoru Iwata, Shigesato Itoi of the Mother series, and CEO of the Pokemon Company, Tsunekazu Ishihara. Players could raise a virtual pet on the 64DD, transfer it onto a Game Boy where it was kind of like a Tamagotchi, and then import it to the virtual world of a friend who had their own 64DD. Cabbage spent at least 4 years in development, and they even were planning on adding expansion content with additional discs, but unfortunately it was abandoned after the disc drive's abysmal launch. Miyamoto also spent a lot of time producing the Mario Artist series, basically kid-friendly console Photoshop. IGN called it the 64.
Basically got carried with certain ideas which were never going to work.
So easy to use that anyone could figure it out after a few minutes. Miyamoto had high hopes for Mario Artist, but half the series ended up getting cancelled before completion, and the half that did release only sold a few thousand copies. Making matters worse, Miyamoto was so focused on Mario Artist that he had to deprioritize Mario 128's development. The long-awaited sequel to Mario.
So there, difficulty seeing what things are really going to take off and what things aren't.
With the fifth console generation coming to a close, industry belligerents started ramping up for the next console war, GameCube versus PlayStation 2. And Miyamoto had an ace up his sleeve, an aggressively original game he was calling, quote, the next Mario.
Super Mario Galaxy?
Used elements from Mario 128 and produced what he believed would be the next.
Or was it Sunshine?
Video games.
It was Sunshine for
Revolution
GameCube.
for the next generation, just as he delivered
I think it
so
was
many
Sunshine.
times before. Releasing a few weeks
Oh
after
no,
the GameCube
Pikmin.
launch, Pikmin was met with adoration.
It's lots of cutesy stuff again.
IGN gave it
And this one is all about you have your little team and you're all doing stuff together. You're getting everyone together doing stuff. It's very alpha.
Doesn't work, but it barely scratched 1 million copies sold, and its
Oh.
sequel sold even less, despite earning even
I quite
higher
enjoyed
reviews.
Pikmin, actually.
But the series was a flop by Miyamoto standards. Super Mario Sunshine.
That's Super Mario
started to
Sunshine, I
sell
mean.
great. It only sold half the numbers of its predecessor, and when the next Zelda game released a year later, it sold so poorly that its director, Eiji Aonuma, said it, quote, could be the end of the franchise.
Oof.
The GameCube itself wasn't doing too hot either. It was getting outsold 7-1 by the rivals at Sony. The rest began to wonder if Nintendo would succumb to the same fate Sega suffered a few years earlier, exiting the console business to focus exclusively on software. Financially, it was the darkest period in history since Miyamoto's rapid ascent 2 decades prior. But for Miyamoto and Nintendo both, it was darkest before the dawn. He was in his 50s now, and unlike his younger days, he wasn't just making games for children around the world. Now his own kids were old enough to play them, and he took a hard stance on how much they could play. He told his kids that the home consoles belonged to him. He owned them, and he'd only allow them to rent the consoles for a few hours at a time. Watching them play his games, and sometimes even letting them playtest his prototypes, he started to think about how he could appeal to less experienced gamers, and the wider audience in general. He told his friend Shigesato Itoi, I want to make something where 80 to 90% of consumers can make it to the end. Even if that means we have to risk that players who make it that far lose some of that feeling of challenge or achievement.
This is
Miyamoto was
very
worried
alpha.
that modern games were only drawing in people who were already gamers, when what he really wanted to do was make gamers out of ordinary people. In other words, if Nintendo's slice of the gaming pie was getting smaller, then the pie itself needed to get a whole lot bigger. As Nintendo began working on their next console, the Wii, Miyamoto took charge of its revolutionary controller and played a key role in the pack-in title that eventually became Wii Sports. Now approaching 60, he was weighing himself daily, exercising, and making
Yep.
charts to track his
All about
performance.
wellness. I remember with Nintendo Wii having such an emphasis on wellness and feel-goodery.
Popularity and on gamers, and it became a huge system seller. Nintendo released their new handheld, the DS, around the same time. Miyamoto targeted casuals with another aspect of his personal life. He's actually a semi-professional
Dog breed. Oh my goodness.
sheepdog named Pete.
Yeah.
So he combined it with
Yeah.
ideas from the long.
I think he has to be ESE.
Nintendo.
He has to be.
The
There's actually a
second
good amount of introverted sensation in there.
selling game was the new Super Mario Bros. Reboot. There was one Miyamoto hobby that didn't garner rave reviews and a giant pile of money, but we won't dwell on it. Both the DS and the Wii were incredibly successful at tapping into the casual market that Miyamoto was targeting, though he never forgot his core audience. The Wii's biggest launch title, The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess, garnered reviews
Yeah, that was a fun game.
96% and more than doubled the sales of Wind Waker. It even managed to outsell Ocarina of Time. An achievement that possibly saved the series from extinction. Not to be outdone, Super Mario Galaxy
that's it.
a year later, with review scores of 97%, doubling Sunshine sales and stealing the crown from Mario 64. Miyamoto was back on top, but he had a lot more help this generation than he had previously. By now, he'd been promoted to senior managing director, more like a supervisor than a hands-on director. He became infamous for what his colleagues described as flipping the tea table. If he didn't like what he was seeing mid or even late development, he'd order his subordinates to completely rework major concepts, sometimes so drastically that games could get delayed a year or more. Miyamoto's table flipping instilled...
There's the extroverted sensation.
But sales records breaking left and right, it was hard to argue with the results.
Yep.
However, all good things must come to an end. By the Wii era's closing, it seemed Miyamoto already had one foot in retirement. In 2011, he went on Japanese TV revealing he wasn't long from parting the industry, saying, "Honestly, I think seriously about what to do as I step away. When I want, I'm able to step back and pretend I'm not there, making sure not to butt in with my opinion, for instance. Although sometimes I can't help myself. I think the closer I get to 60, the easier it's been for me to pull away. Of course, I still have 5 years left." A month later, the then 59-year-old Miyamoto told Wired, "Inside our office, I've been recently declaring, I'm gonna retire. I'm not saying that I'm going to retire from game development altogether. What I mean by retiring is retiring from my current position." The next day, Nintendo stock plunged $500 million, prompting the company to release a statement saying, actually, Miyamoto wasn't going anywhere, and his role wasn't changing one iota either. But despite their assurances, it was clear to anybody paying attention that wasn't entirely true. His Mario co-director, Takashi Tezuka, had started a Mario Cram School to teach Nintendo's younger generation of developers how to make Mario games. And in the years that followed, Miyamoto continued to make no secret of the fact that he was passing the torch on both hardware and software as he phased himself out of the equation. His name still graced the credits of Mario 3D World, A Link Between Worlds, Star Fox Guard, and many more first-party games as a general producer, but he wasn't as intimately involved as he was in his younger days. In 2015, his title was changed to Fellow at Nintendo, and much of his attention turned...
He does come a bit more like sort of a Walt Disney of video games to some degree. All right, so yeah, I think ESC for him. I hope that was helpful to people. Right. And I think that's it in terms of the super chat. So thank you very much, everyone. If anyone wants to make a last super chat, they are free to do so. In the meantime, I'm just going to take another opportunity to plug the course. If you would like to be able to type people yourself, if you would like to develop the theoretical knowledge in which to do so, please consider taking the WSS Type Mastery pathway. So that goes in depth into socioeconomics theory, talk to you about the information elements, the functions, all 16 types and what makes them what they are, intertype relationships, and also then how to type people, both formally and informally. There are hundreds of video examples used in articulating what the different types are like. It has content on it you won't actually find elsewhere on the internet, going really deep into the theory, different structures that make things up. And yeah, in all, it's a very well appreciated course. So if that's something you'd like to do, please consider going to worldsocionics.org and looking up the WSS Type Mastery Pathway, which will enable you to purchase that course. So yes, and if you do that, if you then complete the coursework of writing an essay on a particular subject and doing an analysis of them, and if you do that well enough, you will get a certificate which will confirm you as a WSS sociologist, and you can join the WSS diagnostics team if you so want to do so. Anyway, I hope you all had a lovely rest of you. I all have a lovely rest of your week. Yes, if any more super chats come in the next minute, then I will type them. Otherwise, I shall finish the live stream. I'll wait maybe 2 more minutes. I think I'll just watch the rest of the video until then.
Objects like a Super Mario movie, the Super Nintendo World theme park, and spending more time with his family, playing the guitar, and walking his dogs. Miyamoto celebrated his 71st birthday last year, and there's no question he's left a huge legacy since Donkey Kong. The Japanese government honored him with the Person of Cultural Merit Award. GDC gave him the Lifetime Achievement Award, and the French government made him a knight. He recently told The New Yorker, "It's taken about 10 years, but I feel that the younger generation here is now fully capable. We are moving toward a position that will ensure the spirit of Nintendo is passed down successfully. I'm not concerned about that anymore." We hope he's right, and whatever the future holds for you, Mr. Miyamoto, we wish you all the best. You have left a huge impact on Nintendo, the industry, and an entire generation of people that play video games, us included. Running around Bob-omb Battlefield, catching all 151 Pokemon, sailing the Great Sea. Your imagination defined our childhoods.
Oh yeah, sorry Isaac, I will do that. Had a very, very, very busy week with grandma death and electoral campaigns. But this week I actually have some time, so I will definitely do it. Promise.
And you can pre-order it right now. For more on that, check out the video on screen. And hi, my name is James. I hope my voiceover was okay. I hope it wasn't terrible. I have a YouTube channel called Nitro Rad where I review 3D platformers, sometimes horror games or weird indie games or I don't know, whatever I feel like. Special thanks to our translator Jacob and Sprite Cell for consultation. And of course, thank you for watching. See you next time.
All right. So that's that. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.